What's up, guys? I'm SaltEMike, and this is your Star Citizen Week in Review for September 23rd, 2019. We like to start out with the patch notes each week, but this week, unfortunately, I don't have patch notes that I could share with you. But I can share with you that 3.7 is in the Evocati test flight, and as many of you may know, or some of you may not, I am part of the Evocati test flight, so I can't share any of my experiences, patch notes, or anything like that. That I've signed a non-disclosure agreement for. But a lot of the stuff that's out there is common knowledge through the roadmap or Inside Star Citizen anyway, so we're just going to move right into the roadmap updates, but it is exciting that, 3.7's with Evocati, and we can expect an open PTU patch and even a live build, hopefully, by the end of the month. And again, moving on to roadmap updates, we're just going to discuss what progress has been made towards that 3.7 live build, hopefully at the end of September, beginning of October here. And they made some progress towards the Harbinger and Sentinel Vanguard variants, and they're now in polishing. So that's pretty exciting that those are kind of off of any additions that needed to be added to them and onto any fixes that need to come in before we go live. Now, 3 new things made it onto the roadmap this week, which is a little weird this late in the patch, but it seems they've popped in as polishing, so they've been worked on, but they just didn't have them on the roadmap, which kind of goes along with what Aaron told us a while ago. There's work going on, but we don't really know where it's going to fall, so we don't put it on the roadmap right away. But we see that there's an AC Pirate Swarm overhaul, so that's an Arena Commander Pirate Swarm overhaul, and a Star Marine new map called the Good Doctor. And we also have glow sticks, but we're going to mention those later. Arena Commander Pirate Swarm overhaul is meant to make it like a bit more challenging and fun for us, and I imagine it's meant to gather some feedback for them as far as the combat flight model goes against AI, something that's obviously very required for a game called Squadron 42. The new Star Marine map, Good Doctor, seems just like it's a little bit smaller, more compact, kind of high energy, I think is what it's supposed to be. And it also kind of has a different theme in terms of more like of a high-tech area. And again, like I said, we would talk about glow sticks later on in the video. Now, Inside Star Citizen was a pretty exciting video because, as most of you guys know, I am a huge miner. I love mining. So this one was all about FPS mining. We got one of my favorite developers to discuss FPS mining with, and that's Dan Truffin. So I love when we have designers on the shows because the guys who design the gameplay that we're going to play are the designers. So in my opinion, they're the most important guys to listen to because they're the ones who are decide the level of fun that we're going to have, right? And Dan and his team worked on mining with the Prospector in the past, so it only makes sense to hear from Dan and have Dan's team work on the FPS mining aspects. So we're going to start out with kind of what you need to mine in FPS.
For FPS minables, we simplified the gameplay a bit. The first thing you guys will need to do in order to mine in FPS mode is get yourself a green multi-tool. You can buy a brand new one and buy also a mining attachment. You can swap attachment in Mobiglass, it's not a problem. You just swap them around, and once you do that, you will notice that you can go to ADS mode and you have an entire brand new UI. If you can find a cave, you can start exploring and searching for this. There is no radar to find this. You'll have to find them just using your eyeballs.
So it's really cool to see them using an existing tool and adding an attachment to it. And on top of that, future attachments can come into play and they can really add the gameplay on top of this without creating too much work for them, which is really nice. And I also thought it was really cool that the caves are not just scannable where you can find them like, rocky minables or asteroids in space. It's nice to see that we're just going to have to fly by them and find them. And I think that that's really, really cool that you might be able to find a cave that nobody's found before, and it's your little cubby hole for her resources and minables. So we also hear that they simplified the gameplay a bit, and we're going to let Dan speak on where kind of FPS mining differs from ship mining.
So obviously, you cannot mine the giant asteroid rocks that the ships can mine, and they cannot mine the tiny little rocks because they'll just explode if you use your giant prospector on them. So in order to find one of these rocks, the safest bet is to find a cave. Once you find an FPS mineable and you point your grid multi-tool to it in ADS mode, you will be able to scan it as you do with the ship mineable, and you'll get all the data, the instability, the resistance, the mass it has, and what it's made of. People that are familiar with ship mining, they'll find it very similar, and it has pretty much the same elements. We just streamlined it a bit and made it easier to read and more icon-based rather than text-based. The breaking of the rock, the fracturing functions exactly the same. But once you break it into pieces, you'll get crystal shards falling off on the floor, and instead of actually using a tractor beam to scoop them up, you can actually just put your hand on it, grab it in your hand, inspect the piece you've looted, and put it in your personal inventory. Other ways of getting mining in FPS is either on asteroids. Basically, once you find them in your ship, you'll have to get out of your ship, EVA there, and there's risk involved because you might get caught. You will extract them manually, and once you extract them, you can get back into your prospector and blow that entire asteroid and collect what you were collecting before in your ship mineable.
First off, I like that the mechanic is very similar and familiar for people who have mined before. It's a good, I don't know, maybe a breeding ground for miners who eventually will go from this FPS version into the ship version. So it's a good kind of training ground for them. And another thing that I like as well, similar to the caves, when you get in the caves, it seems like there's no scanning option. So they haven't like added scanning to our suits or anything. So you have to do this all visually with your eyes. And it should be quite difficult in these dark caves to find these FPS minables. So it might be a challenge. And with that challenge should come a really nice and rewarding experience when you do find one, break it, and then go on and sell it. So that's really interesting. And speaking of selling it, I've had my issues with being able to tell whether or not this is actually going to be a profitable and like great experience as far as making money goes. So let's hear Dan speak about what he thinks in terms of profitability these FPS minables will have.
Once you're filled up with material, or let's say you ran out of material because you harvest an entire area, there's no more valuable resources there, you can simply go to any of the shops that accept FPS minables, and instead of having to refine them at a refining kiosk, you can sell them directly. These are pretty much gems. We're talking pure gems that you extract out of the ground. They don't require lengthy refining process, you just sell them to the shop. If you don't want to do the FPS mineable, you can go straight to doing the ship part, but you lose a lot of money out of this. The FPS minables in general are very valuable commodities. They're rare, but they're super, super valuable. So when you find them, you really want to pay attention to it.
So obviously the big difference here is that these gems and these FPS minables are already at their most refined state, I guess. Whereas when you mine with your prospector right now, it's at its most unrefined state. And eventually, we've seen this on the roadmap come and go, unfortunately, is refineries. So one day with the prospector, you would take your ore and bring it to a refinery to purify it and hopefully make more money off of it in the future. But these are at their peak value when you extract them. And Dan made it very clear that these are extremely valuable. So it's been hard to tell how valuable they are on the videos that we've watched, but I'm going to take Dan's word for it that these are going to be really valuable, and we'll see what happens. I'm pretty excited to give them a try. Now, there's not just mining in the game, so I think Dan will mention it here, but if you don't happen to have a mining tool with you, you still can enjoy picking things up and putting them in your inventory.
In the rare case that there will be some explorers out there that come without bringing a multi-tool, or they didn't just get the money to buy one yet, they'll be able to explore all these caves and planet areas and find various other harvestables that they can just loot directly. It doesn't require a fracturing mechanic or anything like this, or a special tool. You just go there and you can loot them. There's fruits now, there's various desert dry plants, there's trees that have stuff hanging off them, bushes, all kind of different things. There's even animal remains that hopefully you will find funny. We'll see. So all of this stuff hopefully brings a lot of gameplay for you guys, and it also hopefully brings you guys a lot of profit, because all of these things you can sell for money at shops.
So again, it's not just for miners. Everything that's being put into 3.7 should be able to be enjoyed by everybody and hopefully profited by everybody, like Dan said there. Now, we just talked about this earlier in the roadmap update section, but glow sticks. I never thought I would be excited about glow sticks, but with how dark the caves are and how vast they seem to be, just go watch the video. Now, I cut that down really short, but I just imagine, and it I don't know, it gave me some good warm feelings, I guess, that as you're going through a cave, having a number of these glow sticks could be pretty cool, to leave a little trail to find your way in and out of the cave, or your teammates to find you, and so on. So it just seems like a nice little bit of gameplay there, and I know I'm going to get the comments down below like, oh my god, this game is so bad that he gets excited about glow sticks. Like, yeah, it's not necessarily because the game is so bad, it's because the game, in some factors, pays such high attention to detail that it's like no other game, you know? And that's one of the things that we love about Star Citizen. It's one of the reasons why we're in the pickle that we're in as far as development goes, but at the same time, it's sort of the reason why we signed up for a game like this and backed it. So I get excited about glow sticks, you know? Kill me. I'm sorry. Moving on to Star Citizen Live. It was a lore video, so normally we wouldn't discuss this at all on this show because most of the lore stuff doesn't have an immediate effect on the gameplay, but this does seem like it will. Now, somebody asked a question about quantum fuel mining and how it works. They go into basically what the initial lore was for quantum fuel mining, and here it is.
But let's talk about the quantum fuel. Can you tell us a little bit more about the lore behind quantum fuel?
The design team was starting to look at down the road of introducing quantum fuel mining into the game, and so we needed to come up with the lore behind what quantum fuel was and how it's found to kind of help guide them. We got their kind of design qualifications of like, oh, it needs to be, you know, found in almost every system. It has to be like rare for the price, but also slightly common so that you're not stuck somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, one of the interesting things, just sorry to interrupt, the kind of parameters that was really fun was because we have quantum fuel before we discovered jump points, the idea was like it had to basically exist in the solar system.
So it's quite nice to hear right away that it's fairly abundant and being able to find in any system you go. So quantum fuel, you don't always, you're maybe not always on the hook for having to buy it and be a part of the gold sink that would be refueling, but you can kind of do it on your own no matter where you are. And then they go a little bit more in depth on this.
The basic idea, I can give a sneak preview of some of it, is that there are these particles called transients, which are like not only affect, like can bend space and mass around themselves, and they were like this really cool discovery, but they were very fleeting and hard to find. And then scientists slowly after discovering this, they were able to detect them in like doing the, oh, I'm totally blanking. What's the Hadron Collider kind of thing? Oh, yeah. Particle colliders were able to pick up on these, and eventually they were able to find that these would be stably existing temporarily in transisotopes, where these transients would temporarily attach themselves onto atomic particles and exist. And that was the main way we started harvesting them, is that certain elements are more prone to existing as isotopes that you can then use to harvest the transients, and that gets turned into quantum fuel.
Now that's basically the in-lore scientific description about how it works. But what I'm more concerned about is actual game design. So they go a little bit more into what that's like, and it's basically the game designer speaking through the writer here in this situation.
You'll be able to find using scanning, like you'll find a rock that's iridium, and then through scanning it, you'll see that it's 5% of these trans isotopes, and you'll have to harvest them quickly, and if you put in too much energy, they'll devolve back into kind of normal isotopes. So there's a high risk, and you have to be careful with harvesting and then transporting them to make sure that you preserve the transients until it's refined.
So that was just a quick kind of in-game design of what it's going to be like when we're trying to mine for these things. So pretty cool, pretty exciting. Not exactly sure when we'll see this. We'll have to see how the roadmap plays out for the rest of the year. But I figured as far as in-game discussion goes, as Star Citizen Live went, that was it. Then moving on to miscellaneous news, we had John Crewe discussing that he doesn't actually hate the Cutlass, and that the Cutlass is one of the higher HP ships, but a lot of this leaves out what the problems are with the game right now versus, basically why the Cutlass seems so easy to kill. They don't really mention the fact that, it has a really big cross section, it's easy to hit, and there's really no differentiation between larger, tankier ships and smaller, lighter fighters. So it's just an easy kill for a lot of people, and I don't see really the point of having this discussion right now, as it's all probably going to change anyway. And then this freaking teasing of the ship sale is... I don't care, really, but it's kind of cringy at this point. And I mentioned this in a tweet. I made some funny tweet, like they're selling this ship like it has the solution to immortality, I think I said. And there were some comments there, and I responded to a few of them that they wouldn't do this unless there was something really interesting about this ship that they were excited enough to tease it this way. So in some way, shapes, and forms, I'm kind of excited about this to see what additions they're going to be making to the game. But at the same time, I know whatever additions come with this ship, we're not going to see for a long time anyway. And the design is likely to change by the time it gets there. So we'll see what happens. It's definitely not on my top priority list of what I'm interested in. But the thing that probably excited me the most this week was a new way of looking at the community roadmap. This was made by a community member, and I usually use like Odysseus's roadmap update images, but this is a way more hands-on, and for me personally, an easier to understand and comprehend way of looking at the roadmap. And he basically made a little website that kind of mirrors what the roadmap looks like, but replaces or places a HUD on top of what we already are used to looking at, and showing kind of the progress and the weekly progress that has gone on. So I will leave a link in the description for that. As always, I leave a link in the description for all of the information that I gave you guys here. So always check those out. And that's going to do it for this week. It was a pretty light week, obviously, because of the Evocati patch and not being able to talk much about it. But yeah, I feel like next week's going to be a really exciting week, as I have the expectations, just based on the date, that you would expect Evocati to be open PTU by the end of next week or the end of this week, early next week. So we'll see what happens. But as always, guys, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like on it and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. I'm really excited to be doing, if 3.7 is nice and stable, and a lot of the missions are working, unlike 3.5 and 3.6. I plan on doing a lot of in-game tutorials, guides, maybe live stream highlights, all sorts of things on this YouTube channel, so really make sure you hit that subscribe button, because, man, at 3.5, I was hoping to ramp up our YouTube content, but the game kind of prevented that, so I'm hoping in 3.7 we're going to be able to do a lot more. So Guys, I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you guys next week.